So that's like a huge blue ocean to have a podcast. Oh yeah, you probably know this. Like creating a podcast is like it's really easy to start a podcast to a point, but like to sustain a podcast, we're looking
Right.
at like 90% of people kind of give up and never make it to episode 50. So that's like a huge blue ocean to have a podcast. I know that everyone thinks everyone starts one. To maintain it is really important to not only find strategic ways to incorporate that podcast in your marketing and in your business goals, but also to incorporate some joy. And I definitely talk about the importance of making this a really exciting project for you because it's about longevity. And so if you don't have fun and if you're not strategic, you're probably going to drop it off at some point. So it's really important to do that.
Welcome back. Today, I have a very interesting guest. She is not only working the matrix, she's seeing the whole matrix. She is the podcaster for the podcasters. Please welcome Anna, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Thank you. Yeah, I that's one of the most unique ways I've been introduced before on a podcast. So thank you for that. I'm an Xavier. I'm the founder of the podcast space. I'm a podcast strategist and marketer for impact-driven podcasters. What this means is that I work with leaders who want to make the world a better place in creating content that helps them further their business and get to their business goals. Because as you know, and Alya, you probably know this, like creating a podcast is like, it's really easy to start a podcast to a point, but like to sustain a podcast, we're looking
Right.
at like 90% of people kind of give up and never make it to episode 50. So that's like a huge blue ocean to have a podcast. I know that everyone thinks everyone starts one. To maintain it is really important to not only find strategic ways to incorporate that podcast in your marketing and in your business goals, but also to incorporate some joy. And I definitely talk about the importance of making this a really exciting project for you because it's about longevity. And so if you don't have fun and if you're not strategic, you're probably going to drop it off at some point. So it's really important to do that.
Yeah, I think you hit a very important point here. And as we're talking our take one, me embarrassingly live streaming this because
It
I forgot
happens.
to toggle off a thing. You said that a lot of business owners say, "Oh, let's just get some leads through this," but it's not about the leads, right? It's about creating connections and just really another way of getting in touch with people.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of people, especially prior to COVID, as a business owner, I am based in the US, and there's these idea of like, oh, let's grab a coffee. But a podcast interview is considered like a media appearance. And I have a background in journalism. I used to work in radio and I did all the things as you can imagine. And I always found fascinating how in the US, I'm originally from Portugal, but like in the US, I feel like there's this like really interesting approach to doing business, and a podcast interview is considered like a radio interview because you're not going to send an intern. You're not going to send your
Right,
assistant to a
right.
podcast interview, right? You're going to be sending a CEO. You're going to be sending a VP. You're going to be sending a director. And so you're able to build that connection, a 1 hour interview with, pre production and having those conversations ahead of time. You can get really a feel of like who this person is, who they are as a business partner, potentially, or like do they know what they're talking about? Like what's honestly like a lot of my clients go off vibes. And so it's so true. Like you can really feel the essence of a person when you're talking to them. We were talking in this interview before we had recorded that I'm European. We're both like have French husbands. And so there's like these connection, like there's just
It's
these.
crazy synergies.
Exactly. And so we're connected on a deeper level than if we were just like, oh, like, can you hop on a Zoom or whatever? Like, it's completely different. And so a lot of folks think that, oh, yeah, like, I'll just like schedule. And I've been a victim of those where it's like you're sitting down with someone and you're just a number in their calendar. I'm like, this is an awful experience. And to your point, it's about connecting to people and building that connection long term as well. It's not just like you have them on the podcast and then goodbye, is nurturing those relationships on social media later and staying connected on email or whatever it is. But it's like the quality of your network is your net worth. It's something that is said here in the US a
Oh, I
lot.
love that.
And it's like if you are, somewhere where maybe you're a bit more, you're living in an area where you don't have access to decision makers, you can create a podcast and have access to anyone in the world because you're able to build that connection. We're recording this on Riverside, and it's like that's one of the things that we can do. We can have access to anyone in the world. I mean, where else would you be able to do that, right? LinkedIn can feel a
Exactly.
little sleazy. I mean,
Yeah.
my inbox is a dumpster fire. I'm like, oh my
Just
God, no.
salespeople.
Yes. And I mean, podcasting is one of the podcasters are one of the most trusted media people on the internet, right? And so we create intimacy, we create relationships on a podcast episode with both the audience and the guests. So there's no better way to increase and up level the quality of your network than podcasting, really. I'm just like, it's a big advertisement for podcasting today.
No, but I fully support that because honestly, and it also goes back to your point where you said that you gotta be enjoying this, you gotta find joy in this. I honestly started this whole initiative when I was terrified of launching a product that I've been working on for several months, and I was like, "Ooh, you know what? I'm too scared of launching anything. Let me just build a community first." And like podcasts came up as a very natural, I guess, outlet for that because I absolutely love speaking with people. I love asking them questions. I love learning about them. So I was like, this is great. And I'm a year in, close to 50 episodes recorded, not released yet. And
Woohoo.
I'm like, this is great. But I think one other important element of the whole podcast scene is that it has to have, I guess, some impact, right? Because if you're just shipping off episodes, but nobody's barely listening to it, what's the point?
Yeah, you definitely need to measure, and this is where it's being strategic. It can take for most people, and I'm saying like someone who is not very prolific on social media, it can take anything from like 8 to 12 months to start seeing some results and some action. And the cool thing about podcasting is that you don't need like I'm gonna say share some real numbers on my podcast. Like there's months where I have only 500 downloads on my show. There's months where I have like 300. Yet that doesn't impact the way that people perceive my brand because those 300 downloads mean and that either I had, 300 people listening, or maybe I had like 100 people listening. They are binging my podcast. They want to be there. It's not like social media
So
where
the
you're
real
scrolling, you're
fans.
like, whatever,
Yeah.
right? You can look at the data and say, okay, this episode performed better because more people are finding it and more people are listening to it. When we're looking at those consumption numbers, we maybe have over 100% of consumption in that episode, which means people are re-listening to it, right? Or replayed some sections. And I don't think enough people, again, it's because it's vanity metrics and people look at social media and like, oh, you need big numbers. And I help clients who have fairly small podcasts, like under 1,000 downloads per episode. And we're looking at like they are able to grow their business. They're able to get leads from the podcast. They're able to um, become a go to person because they have a podcast. A lot of people, again, like having a podcast is still a big deal. So you become the go to person if you consistently have a podcast, release it and own your expertise. And this is where it's like a little tricky. A lot of folks go, oh, I'll just have guests. But if you want to build your authority as a thought leader, you need to talk. You can't just like let the guest do the heavy lifting because
Yeah.
yes, it does take more time. Yes, it's more pressure on you as a host to prepare thought. Like talking for 5 minutes to 8 minutes to 10 minutes, like having a monologue, it is hard. So,
Very hard.
right? So, I mean, not for me. Only because I've been doing my show for years now. But it's one of those things that if you want to become a better speaker, like I personally, I'm originally from Portugal. English is not my first language, and I noticed the difference when I started the podcast in 2023 to now. I am such a confident speaker on stage. I used to feel one time I nearly fainted on stage because I was just so nervous. Because I was like, I'm gonna forget words in English, and today I'm like, whatever. Like it builds your confidence, and there's so many different things that you consider. Like, I mean, I'm curious, what was the one thing that you felt like as a host that really helped you build your confidence in?
I think the fact that I didn't have to like speak fast because I'm a very fast speaker, and
Same.
when I was younger, I thought that speaking faster meant like I could get more like words in, blah blah blah. Especially when I was working in male dominated environments, I was like, and on the podcast, I was like, you know what, I can actually slow down and just like, and this gives me more confidence now. And I now see it like in the hindsight, I'm like, holy shit, that was actually not a confident move. Just like speaking too fast, not making pauses, not breathing. Like I literally used to be out of breath at the end of my
Oh
speech. I'm
wow.
like,
That is really interesting. And again, it talks to the unique insecurities we have, or just, you were confident in your expertise, but like when it
but I
comes
was
to
always
like
an
showing off.
immigrant. I was always an immigrant. I was always
Mm,
the outlier because I basically, as soon as I finished school, I think I worked like for a year in Russia and then I moved to the US. And then from US, I moved to France. So I've always been like the odd one out in the room, you know? So I
and a
had to,
woman.
and a woman, exactly. And plus, some cliche attached to blonde Russian girls. So I had to like work twice as hard for
Yeah.
being recognized professionally. So for sure, like the speech tempo, I think was attached to it.
Yeah, and once you become like it's your show, so there's like some weight to it. You are, and I always
Exactly.
say this to my clients, it's like you are the host of this show. Like you're not just like doing a little podcast. You're host of a podcast. Like it comes with a different weight in today's time. Like people before were like, "Oh, how's that little project of yours going?" And like podcasts are associated with our leadership, so it's your own house to share your expertise, to invite people who care for their expertise or whatever it is. Like you are building a digital footprint, and it comes with different weight. And I feel like subconsciously it starts kind of like seeping into your mind, into like, oh wow, like I'm creating something, like I'm
Exactly.
right. it's
Exactly.
it's so, as business owners, and I find this, as like I am a recovery people pleaser. I am recovery, like
Guilty as
perfectionist.
charged.
Oh my god. I normally don't say that I'm a perfectionist. I say that I have high working ethic. And still same BS. But you are you are always creating content up to a level. And so like sometimes we forget to play, and creativity is so important. And like learning how to play as a host and how to like trust yourself comes with time, because people don't like, listeners only come to you for two reasons. One, they want company, or two, they want to learn something. But even within
Right.
that learning, we pick the teachers we want, right? And so it's like learning how to trust yourself, how to like, okay, like actually let me lean in and share a little bit of my expertise, and let me ask this. Like the way that you craft an episode, I always say podcasters are artists. I don't care. It's true, because like when you write, people say like, oh, you're a writer, you're an artist. When you're like drawing, oh, you're an artist. When you're editing, you're like choosing an editorial like flow to the episode, like the questions you ask me, whether you edit a lot or not. So there's a lot of those elements that like really pull our creativity in. And if you're not having fun, you're not like really enjoying the process. So that's why I'm saying like it's more than just like talking. So I hope everyone listening right now is thinking like how podcasting truly is, like you're shaping a product. It has like all of these parts, and like how you market it, like all of these elements.
Gotta be shitting me. Oh my
All of today,
God. Like
everything's happening.
everything.
Do you need to go and open the door?
Yeah, I think it's probably some sort of delivery or something. Hold on, let me mark a
Go.
clip.
I can wait. You're fine. You're fine. Do you want to? I think, can you pause the recording, or will it just stop?
I marked a clip, so the
Okay,
producer will see
go.
where she
You're
needs to go.
fine.
Fucking Amazon. Um,
I was kind of going on and on about it, but let me read. Mhm.
because sorry, I was just gonna say you said something that really resonated with me. You said when you pronounce this phrase, "Oh, I have my show." Oh my god, I literally take so much pride in saying just that one line. Like whenever I message people and I'm like, "Would love to invite you to my show," and I'm like, "I have a show," and it's been a year, and I'm like, I have a show." It's like doesn't get old.
Oh, you're so giddy. I love that. I love that. And it's interesting because a lot of folks, especially in the podcast community, you either have folks who are like, "Yes, start a show. You'll be able to grow it." And there's people who are like, "Oh, who are you? You're not qualified." That's one of the main
Yeah.
kind of limiting beliefs of folks. And as someone who comes from a journalistic background, I can tell you that like that means nothing. Like there's people who have absolutely terrible ways to connect and like the shows fall flat because they're trying to create all of these like big things that is like no like that you don't have to be. I mean, trust me, when I used to have my radio show, I sounded like this because that's how radio hosts speak in Portugal. And I was like, God, this feels so like unauthentic. And when I
Right.
started my show, I was like, I absolutely do not want that. Like I want to talk to you as a person, as I do in real life, because
Mhm.
we're
Mhm.
we're connecting on a personal level. So like
Right.
why should I create this illusion of a persona for podcasting? So,
Killing me.
I'm leaning into it. But it's true. Like you can be your own, captain of your own ship. You make those decisions, but also like it's interesting to just say like we live in a time where it's not about the elites. It's not about being techie and having access to, technology that you can broadcast your show. Like no, it truly is a democratic way to convey information. Sure, there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. Like anyone can start a show, but like what a great time we live in that you can start your own thing and like lean into it and have an impact. And you can go to podcast conferences and you can go to your industry conferences and people will be like, oh hey, like I listened to your show, and you go, holy cow, like what? Like it's an amazing time to be alive, I personally think.
Oh, absolutely, because you can virtually be anyone. Like you can just like deconstruct and reconstruct yourself. And
Absolutely.
I mean, on just a few years ago we didn't have access to this. And now it's like you can even build a product within a few days with all of the AI tools. I'm like, it's mind blowing. Mind
Yes,
blowing.
yes, there's too much competition, but also again, it's like that idea of like there's a lot of noise, but once you drill through, like I launched my
Exactly.
company in 2020, and I created my first podcast in 2008 while I was in journalism school, and like the technology back then, it was a lot more like complicated and like
Mm-hmm.
what a time that like I can be a business owner and I can find the tools to make this project a reality with however effort and budget I have. And it's like, yes, a lot of people start and in my only 5 years in business, which for most people is not a lot, fair, but I always think about this, like, I saw so many people start in podcasting, like, "Oh, that's the new hot thing," and then they're
Right.
like, after a year or 2, they're like, "I'm bored," like, "Oh, I wanna move into something else," so, it's just like anything, there's a lot of noise, but, like, especially with products, right, like, there's a lot
Mm-hmm.
of tools, but, like, if you really like what you do and if you are passionate about it and you're clever and strategic about it, you will find your core audience, you will create the thing that maybe you dream about creating since you were a little kid. Like the amount of folks who I meet and they're like, "Oh, I always wanted to have my show." And it's like, and now I
Oh.
have it. I'm like, "Yes, that's amazing. That's wonderful."
What's the best way for a new podcast to get discovered? Because I think this is probably the question that's on everyone's mind.
What do you mean by discovered? Like be found?
Yeah, be found as in like how do you get listeners?
Okay.
outside of just obviously like actively promoting on your own social media. But like, I think I've definitely heard from a lot of founders who say, okay, I don't really have any influence on any social media. So, like, what do I do?
Yeah, that's a good one. So, because a lot of folks think like, how do you get discovered? Like, some people think is like, how do you make it? Air quotes. So, I wanted to just clarify that. So, there's a lot of different ways, and this is why when I'm approaching any client, I go, okay, what is already working for you? Because I hate to give blanket advice.
Right.
Because for some people, like what matters is that one, you go through the path of least resistance, but also at the same time like what is it that naturally comes to you that is strategic. So if you already have a lot of good SEO traffic coming organically from Google or from AI machines, like let's make sure that those show notes are on your website, that individual episodes are included there. Now it's going to take some time. I think that it depends really what you want. There's about 7 different ways you can use a podcast, but you need to figure out like if you're already doing great on LinkedIn, let's double down on it. Stop following whatever social media is, kind of like new. I'd say you have active and passive marketing strategies. You have your email marketing, you have your social media, you have your SEO, you have word of mouth, like basically going to events. So offline marketing. So that's one of the most, actually, every single time I go to podcast conferences, I start building momentum toward that conference. I start tagging that conference on social media. I start like finding the people who are going to attend. And that builds me a lot of visibility. By the time I get to the event, people go, look at my badge. I've seen your content. Where was it? Like,
Okay.
I was like, oh,
Okay.
I'm, known in the podcast industry, or like this conference, like Podcast Movement is one that I engage with a lot. We have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
really good relationship. They share a lot of my content on Instagram, for instance. And so a lot of folks see my account. And again, this is where it's strategic. The name you pick for your podcast and the name you pick for your social media is super important. Because if it was like an Xavier, people go like, whatever, but it's the podcast space. So it has the keywords of my industry. So people go, oh, like this is legit. Like I want to follow this
Right.
account. It's that emotional connection to recognition of the name, but also it kind of like I present myself as a brand, a brand that has a very like personal marketing approach.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very like I'm the founder, I'm like a company of one, but I still present myself as like knowledgeable and I collaborate. Another way to grow a podcast is to, alongside having a show, to guest on other people's podcasts because people who listen
Oh,
to
yeah. Okay.
podcasts,
That's important.
right? Like if you
Mm-hmm.
are already a podcast listener, you're way easier to convert into a listener of another show versus a
Right.
social media follower into a podcast, right? So that's like a great way to do it. And honestly, I feel like it's going to be a slow burn. It's going to take time to grow, but there's things like tapping into people's networks and talking beyond the podcast. I see a lot of people making this mistake, which is like this in this episode, blah, blah, blah. Like, as a host, you're learning, you're having experiences on the show. Like, show us the behind the scenes. Make it a journey. Like, the more you bring people in, and the more you tell them what's going on and what was the idea behind that episode, and like before you launch a product, like don't just like release stuff. There's this concept of building in public that is very known in
Right.
the startup world as well. And so like that's exactly it. The build in public, start talking about the product, and it's you don't need to know everything that you're doing, but like it's more relatable. People are done with perfection. People are done with the I am a founder, I am like the perfect blah blah blah. Like people don't want that. People want to connect to humans. Like that's the reason why the word authenticity was the one of the most popular ones and continues to be. It's because people want to connect to humans, period. Like
Right.
so stop creating this idea of like the grandeur of like having all of these business like connect to a human level. I sometimes share my office a slight different angle and they go, everybody's like, oh my god, this is such I never saw that part of your office. Um because my office is where I record the podcast and I recorded a lot of stories. So there's all to say, there's so many different ways to grow a podcast. And, conferences are one of the most underutilized ones because people go, oh, I'm the founder of blah, blah, blah. But if you go, and I'm the podcast host of this show, like people start getting a little curious, like, especially it's still fairly, like, new, right? Like, there's a
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
mean, how many people in your network have a podcast?
Ooh. In my original network, not a lot, but I've been strategically then also obviously trying to speak with people who already have a podcast because it was easier for them to come as a guest to mine, especially like in my early days.
Mhm.
And also, I've definitely made a mistake of interviewing a couple of people who were like great subject matter experts, but they were not good speakers. So those episodes did not do really well because it was like hard to listen to them. And at this point, I'm like, I know exactly the people who I want to go after at this point. Like, I kind of have like my little checklist, as in like if they
Yeah.
don't have any like video, audio content that I can like preview before I actually even reach out to them, probably not going to be a thing because I'm just a one woman show as well. So it's like I have to really prioritize my efforts.
Absolutely. And you touched on something really important that I want to expand on. When you're thinking about growing a podcast, being strategic about the people that you select, not only are they good speakers, but like, do they have the habit of sharing the episodes they're guesting on? Because having these people who
Yep.
are like very knowledgeable, but then they, for whatever reason, limiting beliefs, imposter syndrome, or even like the fact that they may not like actually like sharing it because they don't use social media or whatever, that is not going to be as impactful as if you pick
Right.
someone who consistently talks about like being on guest interviews and all that. Like, there's so many different ways to look at podcast growth, and it's like, okay, stick to what you know, test, especially if you're just trying new things, test social media platforms and just see what works. I would say YouTube is one of the bigger ones for podcast discovery. um a lot of people, and again, this podcast is being on video, and the data tells us that basically people who find podcasts on YouTube then migrate to audio only podcast platforms because they go, "Oh, I'm platform agnostic in that sense."
Ah,
They
okay, yeah.
find it
Okay, yeah.
because, again,
Mhm.
thinking through user behavior, we had more years of using YouTube to search for content
Right,
than
right.
podcast platforms.
Mhm.
So, that's one of the things that I normally recommend. Like, try to have your podcast optimized on YouTube. So and again, Google owns YouTube. So when people search for something, videos are recommended. So it's
Right.
such a like when we're looking at the user path, it's such a smooth path. And again, give people a reason to go and subscribe to the show. Tell them that you have, something that maybe if you're listening on an audio platform, like go and make sure that you follow the YouTube channel for whatever. So diversifying some of your like promotional efforts is going to be really important to get that discovery going.
I love that. I definitely so in my statistics, I see people coming to Spotify through I think primarily Instagram because some of my reels do quite well. So the reels, like the short clips that I would make out
Yep.
of the episode, so it gets them hooked, and then they would go listen to the episode. And I mean, I've been obsessed with the stats for a while, and I saw that actually even from the guests sharing, I don't get a lot of listeners. Like usually people would engage with their post, as in like, oh yeah, cool that you were on the podcast, but they won't actually
Right.
listen. So I relied on this as a like discovery strategy, but then very quickly I realized that it was by no means a discovery strategy. It was adding a lot to like content diversity and adding like really just like having really good content in the first place, but by no means it was like a marketing strategy.
Yeah. I mean, here's something that I caution people. As podcasters, we have our content, but we do not and should not expect social media to just drive content to the podcast. I personally believe we should build community in, like,
Right.
especially Instagram, for instance, is like, it's my home. I love Instagram. So I share a lot. I don't tell the call to action always to be like, go and check the podcast. It's kind of a nudge. It's like, hey, in case you have forgotten today, like there's a new episode or whatever. And there's these whole like brand building that can happen on social media. But if, to your point, your expectation was, oh, social media will build the downloads, of course it's not going to happen because it's not
Right.
100% of people. But then again, like YouTube on shorts can be a very good strategy to drive traffic to the podcast, right? So it's always like being realistic about, because again, when people release data, they go, "Oh yeah, people are finding new podcasts through social media," and then the side of that is like that. Then you probe a little deeper, and they go, "Oh yeah, like people like Gen Z, they say they air quotes watch podcasts. What they actually do is they watch podcast clips on social media," and it's like. That is not listening to podcasts. Like that's not watching podcasts. And
Right.
so, like okay, understand like okay, if you want to build community, it's great to still have build that engagement on that channel. But again, what are we doing then to build that growth on maybe a platform that will have like a user path that is a little cleaner, smoother, less friction. So good on you for checking stats. I feel like most people most people never do like, oh, I wonder like why my podcast isn't growing. I'm like, when was the last time you looked at your analytics on social media and all the other places? Like, well, a long time ago. It's like, okay, let's start there. Let's start there because data has answers, and it's
Absolutely.
it's always there. Like if you don't have answers because you haven't probed deep enough, and you're something that I love doing, by the way, not enough people do, is I actually have a lot of conversations with my podcast listeners. So I will, if we're talking, for instance, on Instagram messages, I will go, if they say that they're a listener of the show, I'm like, oh my God, I would love to talk to you. Can we book a time? And I do that like maybe once a month. And it gives me incredible insights into my
Oh,
business and how they perceive me. You should
that's
totally
so
do that.
good. Because
But
at
you
the end
have
of the
to
day,
ask.
podcast is a product too, so you got to be talking to your users. Yeah, that's a very
Yep.
good angle. Yeah.
And people see you as a celebrity. They will never, like, you can say as many times as you want, I would love to talk to my listeners. People never feel like, unless they're like, it's the minority, should I say? It's not like never, but most people don't feel like it's them that you're talking to. They're like, oh,
I
but like
see.
they're like a
Mhm.
celebrity. Like they're not talking to me. So when you ask them directly, and I had so much good insight coming through some conversations with listeners about like why maybe they haven't considered working with me, or maybe what they like, what words do they associate with my brand? And that is
Mhm.
marketing gold. And I mean, you as the host, you long for those interactions with your listeners. You're
Right.
always like, did they like it? Did they not like it? Even though Spotify has like the comment section on episodes, like most people don't leave comments. They don't feel compelled to do so. So, those like going first and going, hey, so and so, we've been talking on Instagram for a while, or you always engage with my stories. I would love to talk to you for a second. And people are so starstruck. It's so cute. I'm like, kind of like, what are you doing? I'm a regular person. Like, oh my God. But it's awesome because you get so much insight. So I know that you're like thinking like, that's gonna what I'm gonna try because it's effortless. Like it doesn't take too much time. It's
No,
just benefits.
absolutely. But it's key. It's key because, like I said, if you treat the podcast like a product, that will give you all the insights that you need, and potentially could even help you pivot, as they call it
Yeah.
in the product world. Yeah, because it's exactly what I did. Gosh, I think about a month ago. From now, I've changed. I rebranded the podcast because when I first started, it was Business Savages, because I was just like, it was kind of like venting space for people who hated all the LinkedIn success stories. But then I
Yeah.
realized that it's become like just too much free flow, like people not really learning much. Because I've heard, thankfully, some feedback as I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but also we just did not really like take anything away from it. And I was like, okay, time
Mm,
to make a change. And I was like, okay, what is the thing that every business struggles with? And then I realized it was the ugly phase, as in like every business hits the ugly phase. It's,
yeah.
I guess, the most important question is, how do you come out of it in one piece? And so I rebrand the podcast, and now I'm trying to center the conversation around that. And by the way, this is the question that I haven't asked you yet. Did you have an ugly phase
Oh my
in the
God.
podcast space?
How many times does that happen in a week, to be honest? I think my brand differentiates itself by me never putting myself out there as the person who always has it figured out. I never inflate my impact. I never
Mm-hmm.
inflate my sales. I tell you, like I keep it real. And so I feel like one of the things that I struggle a lot is to how do you come across, because again, we know from messaging marketing, like the extremes is like that's where the most engagement comes from, right? And I don't want to be that person. I don't want to like shit on people. I don't want to like be the person who's like fake, right? And so to me, positioning myself into a way that like attracts community, that builds a strong brand, like to me that was like the hardest, because I kept seeing, you keep seeing everybody else say like, oh, I'm growing, like this is what I'm making, this
Right.
is what I like. And I'm not about scale. Like I want to scale my business, but like I'm not about like just doing as much as possible and burn myself to the ground. I have experienced a lot of like burnout, but basically like I don't basically full like I'm a rebel. I'm like an ethical rebel. So like whenever people go, "Oh, this is like what how you're going to do it and this is why you blah blah blah." Like I don't resonate with that. But we know that creating strong emotions is what's going to kind of like sell.
Right.
So I'm just like, I'm the little turtle. I'm like one step after the other, and I've it's been really hard to maintain and especially sustain yourself. I will say, as someone who my love language is like what is it, what is the term, of course, like I haven't talked about this in forever, but it's basically like giving me compliments or like help me, like, oh, you're doing good, or like having a
Oh, like
manager who gives you
validation,
your kid,
like giving you
yeah,
validation.
validation,
Yeah.
or like
Mm-hmm.
having, those key moments where like you have someone who's like, you're doing good, keep going, or like, hey, I'm an external processor. So having those conversations, and to pivot from someone who's like, oh, I have a structure as an employee, and how I grow my business through those expected growth. Like as a business owner, as a leader, a CEO, you build your own company, and you
Right.
normally tend to build a company that
Mm-hmm.
by accident you just go down too much. It's like constant pivoting, and I was not ready for that. That was like one of the hardest thing for me, is to go, okay, I don't have a manager, I'm the manager, I'm the leader, I'm the brainstormer, I'm all the things. And to figure out like, what are my benchmarks, where are all my KPIs, and like, is this good? And I realized for a while I was like, this feels off, and I realized through that process, trusting my gut, if someone's results, and this is not me hitting anyone specifically, but it's just like, especially in the US, there's these need to be like, oh, fake it until you make it. I hate that
Mm,
expression,
yeah.
because
Mm-hmm.
it creates the idea that you're not worthy of something when you're like just doing the thing, you're already doing more for yourself than
Mm-hmm.
if you never took a chance on it, right? And so I feel like going through those motions of like, who am I, what's my identity, like how am I doing well, like the internet is of course smoke and mirrors, so I just feel like I'm
Right.
failing all the time.
Same.
That has been and what has helped me is build a community of experts who like we meet and we talk about like business, like, is this happening, is not happening, especially when last year 2024 was a really hard year for me in terms of leads. Like the people in the US, which is, US and Europe are my like two main audience places. And so basically people were so worried about the economy that investment was really slow in podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of clients, like the end of the year, December was insane because people were like, okay, let's go, let's do it. But the whole year was like trying so hard. Okay, this didn't work, that didn't work. Okay, let's do this. And it's just the market was not investing. And when you have folks who go, yep, that's happening to me too, you go, okay, I'm not like doing as bad as just the industry. And I think that has helped me a lot. I went all over the place. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. But what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I think what just really what matters at the end of the day is there's this phrase, the comparison is the thief of happiness. I've
Yes.
memorized this phrase a while ago because I've fallen a victim of this, of just like comparing myself to all those LinkedIn influencers. I'm like, oh gosh, who am I? Those people are like, and I still like I don't know what's wrong with my LinkedIn. Sometimes I get like crazy reach, sometimes I get absolutely nothing, and I'm like, why? but
It's
I've
again
stopped.
persisting.
But I've stopped looking at it. It's like, I mean, I'm aware of it, but I'm no longer letting this affect my consistency, because I'm like, if I only get whatever 10 likes on a post, totally fine. I'm still gonna post next day.
Something that I tell my clients all the time about visibility? We always we always forget to look through the lens of us as users. Think about the amount of
Hmm.
times You listen to a podcast, you listen to so many episodes. You never reached out to the host and said, wow, this podcast changed my life, or I really enjoyed
That's
your
true.
show.
Yeah.
So why do we expect to just like receive
So true.
hundreds of comments, right? And same for social media. There's a lot of what I call the window shoppers, people
Oh, the
who see your
lurkers.
content. Yeah, the lurkers. They constantly see your content. They never
Yep.
engage until one day you post something that is like maybe more, maybe less about your expertise, more about like a phase of life, or maybe it's something that they're going through and they resonate with it. So I always say, keep showing on people's feeds. Stop worrying about the reach. Of course, like you have to look because if it's not resonating, you've been posting and you get zero
Right.
engagement,
Right.
something's wrong, right? However, it's normal to fluctuate and it's normal for us to not see the engagement until like 2 years later. We're talking to someone at a conference or a party or whatever and they go, "Oh my gosh, I love your content. I always see you on my feed." And you go, "You never freaking engage with my content." Right? Like it's so weird, but it's the truth. That's how we behave. So, always think there's a lurker there. They're just not engaging. It's not for them. It will happen. Just got to push.
Exactly, but I think the sad part is that because of the lurkers, the algorithm is working against you. It's like, oh gosh, please don't just lurk, like as well, because otherwise you just like get sucked into that whole, what do they call it, prison. I think on LinkedIn they call it the LinkedIn prison, as in you just get stuck at like 300 impressions or something like this, and you never push through that.
I never, you know what? I actually disagree with that. I personally, and this is just a like a soapbox now. I think that like again, co- algorithms are made of engagement, and it just means that you need to figure out the angle to. It's like it should be a challenge, right? Like kind of like
Right,
people will not engage with it. I think that there's so much content out there, but on LinkedIn specifically, I think that we have a really wrong version of like what it actually like happens. 94% or 96% of people never create content. Only 4% or the 6%, whatever like the other math is, but it's under 10%. And we have this idea of
really.
mhm. And
Oh
so
wow.
LinkedIn is a lot more about lurkers and commenters versus content creators. So those 200, 300 views that you get or whatever, that is actually more impactful because we feel like we just see the people that create content. But in reality, that is more impactful than we think because there's only very few people creating. So I want everybody to think about this when you're creating
Oh
content.
wow. Okay, I didn't realize it was so unfairly split. I thought it was like I thought the creators were a much bigger percentage. That
Maybe
gives me a
in the
completely
past,
different angle.
maybe it has changed in the past. Like I know a lot of people have like migrated to like LinkedIn, but a couple of years ago, the numbers, and I spoke to someone on LinkedIn not that long ago last year, and they said like something, the numbers are around there. Like the people who actually, I mean, think about the amount of people who you know who are like only diving into LinkedIn when on a job search. And LinkedIn has
That's true.
migrated so
That's
much from
true.
what it used to be, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we need to think about more again user behavior. I'm talking about like user behavior. It's like how people behave. Like it just truly is that. Um, and when you realize that you are engaging your LinkedIn community, those 200, like there's a lot more that's your content. But then again, they don't feel they're there. Like for I listened to this really good interview on a podcast from Chris Do, that was this lady. I don't remember her name, but she is a LinkedIn like company pages expert, and she was talking about how for a lot of people, especially who have, especially in the West, who have a job, they think that like LinkedIn is very dangerous, like a landmine. Like liking a post could have repercussions, leaving a comment could have repercussions. So there's this like idea of like there's social media in their life, and then there's like work social media, and they feel like the impact.
Okay,
Okay,
I
I
see.
see you having that like aha.
Mm-hmm. I see exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
So there's that idea, and like, and basically, this whole episode is me brainwashing everybody to really look at their content performance completely differently. Because if you look at how a lot of folks have like these analysis paralysis, this fear that whatever
Right.
they say is going to get them fired for some reason, you start realizing that is a lot more about like the specific circumstances versus their lack of wanting to engage. So
I see
something to
that.
think about.
I see that. I've definitely so this has the two concepts that you described happened to me from one person. It's an ex coworker who recently told me like, "Oh my god, I love your content, la la la, this article and that thing." And I was like, "You literally never like." And then I realized why. You just told me why. It's like she doesn't want to see. She doesn't want it to be perceived as potentially. I don't know. Also joining the rebellion with me.
Yes. Yes. So thinking through, like, why would someone not engage? Especially if the type of people who you have on your network are your past lives content, sorry, your past lives, coworkers and work relationships. A lot of them are still in the cushy job. And if you're an entrepreneur, they're
Right.
like, "Yay, I want to support you," or they may throw a like but never comment, and you kind
Mhm.
of expect because it's our norm. Our norm is to be visible because we know as founders we have to be visible because that's
Right.
how we get right. Like it's like showing up in front of the right people. Like you never know who's listening. I had one of my guests, Lloyd George, who was talking about how a friend of his had like a podcast that had like maybe 100 downloads, and someone on Oprah's team was listening to his content, and then that led to like an insane opportunity. So you truly never know. Just the fact that you're visible, even if it's like on a small percentage, it can still like you can still have opportunities to speak at conferences. You can still have like I have partnerships with Riverside, Captivate, Osha. I have done all of that, and just simply because I'm visible and I reach out, it's more about like how you can use and leverage your visibility and your persona more than the people who reach, because at the end of the day you have something that that company wants, whether that's expertise, a skill, or an audience, even if small, but it's like a really good audience because people want to be there and they're hyper focused. So all to say, doesn't matter the size of the audience, carry on. Like it's gonna happen. I feel like people don't realize how much of an impact they can have on people's lives on a micro scale.
Yeah, that's very true. And this also sounds like we're getting to my favorite section, which I call
Oh,
homework. Um, Anna, what would you like to give as a quick task to the listeners? Can be something that we already discussed on this episode, or could be something completely unrelated. But the floor is yours.
okay. Build more podcast karma. Here's what I mean by this. I am a big supporter of the idea that as people, we can make the world a better place. We can make more change than we think we have on an individual level. So think about how, if you're listening to this podcast, go and leave a nice message. Send us a message on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever it is. Start telling your favorite creators that they are making an impact in your life, because that may be the most important thing that they needed to hear that moment and stop them from giving up, or gave them the breath they needed to create the most impactful episode of their lives, or the most, like when we're thinking about product, the product that's going to change everybody's lives. So I, instead of just thinking it, start doing it, start reaching out, making that a habit of like reaching out to the people. And again, on social media, leaving a podcast review, making the world you want to live in like more equitable just by simply doing micro actions of good
Right.
karma. That is so simple. Like we can truly do that. And so whether that's your podcast, whether that's someone else who's a creator, but I want to invite everyone to start building those moments of goodness in their daily lives.
I love that. Final question.
Yes.
What's the one truth that you know today that you wish you could have told your younger self 5 or 10 years ago?
So many. Oh my goodness. Um I think it's, you don't see yourself in the way that most people see you, and you have to give yourself more credit than you give yourself on a daily basis. Definitely, I think that's a big one that I wish I told myself. Like, I think that I'm not doing as great as I am, or just like, just basically, I'm living what I thought wouldn't be possible 5 years ago, right? So just like thinking like every little step is more meaningful than I think it is. So that's what I would tell myself.
Oh, I honestly personally needed to hear that today. So thank you.
Yay.
um, what's the best way for people to find you and get in touch with you?
Yes, absolutely. Follow me on Instagram. I'm at the podcast space. And of course, listen to my show, the
We'll
podcast
tag
space, which
everything
is
in
the same
description.
name. Yes. It's the same for brand recognition. So it's easy. Yeah, I would say, honestly, follow me. I'm just exactly as you're listening to this podcast interview. I'm that on a personal level and on social media. There's no, like difference between who I
Yeah,
am.
Anna
So
doesn't have
please
five
let me know.
different personalities.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, my
Maybe.
Portuguese one, my Spanish, my French, my English. Yeah, that I definitely have, but not as professional me and personal me.
Oh, thank you, Anna. It was really good. I felt a little bit like therapy in some places, but honestly, that was great. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'll be catching up on your latest episode soon.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.